Welcome back to Bombadil Tree Farm, an American Tree Farm System certified family forest since 1978. Chapter 2 of this video series ended with this scene from one of our clear cuts, and I remarked that despite its ugliness, I was confident, based on experience, that with a little help, a vibrant, healthy new forest would soon occupy this site. In this video, I will take you to one such forest of hope. We do need to travel to get there, and we need to travel far, 1,523 miles to be exact, from Bombadil Tree Farm in northern Maine to Bombadil Nutzwald in the Piedmont of northwest Georgia. 1,523 miles is 2,450 kilometers. Let's let Google Earth take us there quickly. Today is July 19th in the year 2020, and exactly 20 years ago, everything that you see around me here looked worse than the clear cuts up in northern Maine. That's right. In the year 2000, all of this here on Bombadil Nutzwald in northwest Georgia was a flattened landscape planted into loblolly pine seedlings earlier in the same year, following a clear-cut harvest 1 or 2 years earlier. And the trees harvested were nothing like the healthy, vigorous forest we now have growing on the same site. This 1966 aerial photo shows, with the exception of small young pine plantations in the lower right and upper and lower left sides of the photo, either barren ground or stunted scrubby natural regeneration. Compare that to this 2012 satellite imagery of the same location after conversion to planted pine less than 15 years earlier. That stunted scrub growth forest was the legacy of more than a century of human abuse, but of a different nature than the human abuse that degraded our sites in Maine that we decided to clear cut and replant. Prior to the knowledge and practices developed and implemented in the 20th century, farming was done here with little to no regard for the soils, watershed, topography, and other considerations that later became basic to scientific agriculture. 19th and early 20th century farming on denuded, formerly forested land resulted in devastating erosion. Little more than half a century ago, images like these were common throughout our region of the South. Bombadil Nutzwald bears many scars from similar abuse. This scene and the following photos, taken in the year 2020, display the characteristic pattern of rills and washouts that are now stabilized by planted pine, along with volunteer broadleaf trees and understory vegetation. Bombadil Nutzwald will forever wear this scar, and it is amazing that such a gully formed where the land on both sides slopes so gently into it, but the soil was fragile and the farming practices atrocious. There is more to Bombadil Nutzwald's story of degradation and restoration. Although this 20-year-old plantation of loblolly pine is aesthetically pleasing, ecologically enriching, and commercially productive, it is growing in soil almost completely depleted of organic matter. Even where eroded gullies and ravines did not form, those same 19th and early 20th century abusive farming practices washed away virtually all the upland topsoil and deposited it in flat bottomlands, like this one on Bombadil Nutswald, to the great satisfaction of forest types that thrive in such deep, moist, rich soil. But we were left with fertile oases of hardwood bottomlands like these, and virtual upland deserts where, thankfully, with a little help, loblolly pine can thrive. In other cases, the washed-away upland topsoil was not so lucky and flowed into creeks and rivers to be carried downstream to face a much less certain fate and frequently exert damaging environmental consequences. If you have seen the 1991 movie Fried Green Tomatoes, you might recognize this place. It is Juliet, Georgia, a principal filming location for the movie where the Whistle Stop Cafe is still in business. You might be wondering why treetops appear to grow from the water's surface. What you are seeing are trees that are beyond and below the top of the impound reservoir that was created by a dam built to create a headwater reservoir to power the now abandoned grist mill. The dam was built in 1921, exactly 100 years ago. It originally created a 20-foot or 6-meter deep power pool reservoir to drive what was at the time the world's largest water-powered grist mill. Come along in my little John boat. There is something important that I want you to see. I will anchor a few short meters from the spill edge of the dam to show you the actual depth of the reservoir. Where it should be 6 meters deep, I hit solid bottom at 1. The calm water behind the dam created a settling pool, and within a few short years following the dam's completion, the reservoir filled with soil carried into the river from countless eroded acres within the river's watershed. The impound reservoir extends several kilometers upriver, far beyond the bend, raising the original river level throughout that distance. For many decades now, the original riverbed has been buried beneath billions of cubic meters of eroded soil. Here we are a couple kilometers upstream from the dam. The bridge that you see in the distance is between us and the dam. If we stepped out of the boat here, we could walk to the dam and never get our shoulders wet. During summer, when the water level is lower, the entire distance is only knee deep. If dams hold back water, then ironically, this dam ceased being a dam many years ago. Instead, it became a retaining wall supporting the edge of a vast earthen plateau of eroded soil sediment. Even during periods of high flow, like now, the upstream river is but a shallow sheet of water. During periods of low flow, when no water cascades over the dam, the upstream river is less than that. Without a little help, this vigorous 20-year-old loblolly pine plantation, enriched with a naturally seeded broadleaf understory, would be stunted and unhealthy scrubland. As if catastrophic loss of topsoil and massive erosion were not enough, the same 19th and early 20th century farming practices that I have been repeatedly condemning left an additional legacy of soil degradation. The long ground surface ridges from which these pine are growing were made by man to repair that soil damage. Decades of farming the original soils of this region of the Piedmont Plateau resulted in formation of a water and root impermeable dense clay hardpan just below plow and implement depth. If you have ever dug post holes in such soil, you will know what I mean. Even power-driven augers abruptly cease boring and skate on top of the hardpan. Fracturing such hardpan, a process called subsoiling, requires a little help from some really big machines. Prior to planting these loblolly pine in the year 2000, two large Caterpillar D10 bulldozers with rippers, rigged something like you see here, drove back and forth over the recently completed Clearcut at spacings of about 10 feet or 3 meters, disrupting the hardpan. Pine seedlings planted in the ripper furrows were then able to reach their roots into deep, moist soil. Prior to planting, the Clearcut also received herbicide treatment and a controlled burn. Today's forest belies what 20 years ago must have looked like ground zero of a nuclear blast. Some might say that the aphorism, "Extreme challenges often demand extreme measures," is fitting in this case. I prefer to say that what you see here 20 years later is a beautiful illustration of land and forest restoration, guided by knowledge of and respect for nature's ways and nature's secrets. Yes, we have a vibrant forest and zero erosion, but wouldn't it also be nice to regain some of that lost topsoil? Annual leaf and needle drop, along with post-harvest rotting slash and stumps, are wonderful soil enhancers. Here you see a volunteer red oak seedling taking advantage of the nutrients slowly being released by a neighboring decaying pine stump from a year 2013 commercial thinning. Unfortunately, decaying organic material builds topsoil at about 1 inch, about 2.5 centimeters, every 100 years. So it will take about 1,000 years under forest management to build 10 inches, about 1/4 meter, of topsoil. So here we are, 20 years into the process of rebuilding topsoil on Bombadil Nutzwald. These trees and their microbial partners in this depleted soil, however, are nature's experts at the job, but the process is slow. Loblolly pines are good trees to handle the job on the approximately 80% of Bombadil Nutzwald that is composed of depleted Piedmont soils. And we plan to keep them there doing such a fine job, while they also provide habitat for wildlife, sequester carbon, protect the watershed, grow 100% natural and renewable products for fellow 21st century humans, and offer recreational opportunities for the many with whom we share it, not to mention Bombadil Nutzwald's priceless beauty, tranquility, and comfort to the soul. It is a forest of hope. Please do not misinterpret what I have been saying. I am not advocating clear cuts, site preparation, and planting in every forest environment. I am saying that such practices have a place, and have an indisputably beneficial place in the restoration of degraded and abused forests and their soils. And the world has no shortage of such degraded forests. If you would like to learn more about disastrous erosion in Georgia, this two-page summary in the New Georgia Encyclopedia is a good place to start. It is available on the internet. And this place is worth a visit. No, it is not Zion National Park in Utah. It is Providence Canyon State Park in Georgia. Despite the canyon's beauty, it is a sad, sad testament to devastating erosion caused entirely by careless human activity. It is not a natural geological feature. The canyon's massive 150 feet deep gorge was torn into the landscape over a brief few decades by unimpeded runoff of surface water over fragile soils denuded of forest. 150 feet is 45 meters. I promise that you will enjoy this beautifully and intelligently written book. Its author, a European forester and consultant based in Switzerland, will take you with him as he journeys around the world, introducing you to people of many nations, languages, religions, and cultures, whose committed efforts have and continue to make a difference. I predict that, like me, you will frequently return to this book for inspiration. So don't borrow a copy, buy one. When we return to Bombadil Tree Farm in northern Maine, in Chapter 4 of this series, I predict that when looking at the ugliness of its year 2019 clear cuts, you will share my optimism and my confidence. It is another forest of hope.